This week, we're kind of taking ourselves back to Vietnam. I went with the guys earlier this year, and there was all different types of banh mi. And the bread itself is almost like a fight as to whether there is rice flour in the bread mix or not. I've got two doughs. I'm going to test them both out, see which one's better. So I'm actually going to make this recipe with some leftover turkey in celebration of our friends over in the US for Thanksgiving. So the first ingredient is quite a strange one, and that's vitamin C tablets. So what it does is it kind of acts like a bread improver, and it traps air into the dough and it improves the crumb structure of the bread. So I'm going to crush those. And then half can go into each dough. Now the rest is a little bit more normal. So we've got some salt and sugar. And that sugar will help feed the yeast. A couple of teaspoons of fast action dry yeast. And then we're going to get that into here and start mixing that as soon as possible. So I've got all my dry ingredients together, and I'm just going to put that on a slow mix just to get that evenly distributed. I've got warm water to the touch here and some oil. Now you can use oil or butter or shortening, anything like that. And I'm going to start to gradually mix that water in. So that it's had 2 or 3 minutes of kneading. It's a nice sort of medium sort of to firm texture, this dough. It should be nice and sticky as well. You don't want this too dry. That's a good texture for the dough there. Just use a little bit of oil just to stop it from sticking too much in the bowl. But you can see that I've got a really nice, soft and sticky dough. That is the texture we're looking for. I'm going to do exactly the same with the dough and flour mix that has the plain flour and rice flour mixed together. Next up, the contestant, our rice flour banh mi dough. So that's plain flour and rice flour. There's more plain flour in there than rice flour, about 100 grams of rice flour in that mix. Same again, all the rest of the ingredients are exactly the same. So my oil is going into my warm water. And then gradually add your warm water and oil into the dough. So actually just looking at the dough right now, I feel like this is going to be a heavier dough and not quite as light or light enough for it to be a proper banh mi bread. That's my guess, I don't know, but texture-wise, it just looks a bit heavier. Already, I can feel that that is a heavier dough. And whether that means anything, once we actually get to the baking, we will see. Now, both doughs need at least sort of 45 minutes to rise for the first rise in a nice warm place. So that there is my rice flour and plain flour dough mix. Right, so my two doughs have had about an hour of resting, and you can see how much they've sort of doubled, almost tripled in size. Really airy. That is my plain flour dough. This one here, which looks a bit more grainy, is my rice flour mix. So I'm still sort of gunning for the plain flour only, actually, at the moment. We'll see. It's nice and smooth. Time to knock it back. Really nice and airy. So you could make small or large banh mi. I'm going to go for 3 good size pieces. I'm going to use my sort of Chinese technique of sort of just re-kneading this dough. And this is to sort of form a nice crust around the outside. And I'm just sort of pushing in and pinching and twisting it back together again. If you need a little bit of flour on your hands, at this point you can use just to dust. But what you want is a nice smooth sort of finish around the edge. So that's where it's sort of pushing in and then pinching it back together again helps to do that. So I know you guys like this sort of pinchy, pinchy, twisty, twisty. I've heard one of our big fans, Odin, likes that phrase. It's a nice smooth finish on the dough. So what you want to do now is roll it into a cylinder. And this is going to rise again, so it will kind of rise into its own shape. And then my rice flour dough, the contender for the traditional, we're going to do exactly the same shape. So this whole time I've been thinking the rice flour pastry maybe is going to come out second, but right now I'm playing with the dough and it's just got that firmer texture, which actually, if I want to hold its shape, might be a good thing. Again, we'll know when we actually bake the bread, but as you can see, it's much easier to shape than the plain flour only. So, I've got a little trick here that Shannon, our cookery school manager, actually taught me. Is a couple of rolling pins and a couple of tea towels so that your baguette can find its shape when it's growing into it. So that can just sit there nicely. And that's going to take the next sort of 45 minutes to an hour to then rise again before we then bake them. So my banh mi has had a good amount of time to rest, about an hour actually, and you can see how sort of large a couple of these have become. Super airy. This is the plain flour only, and then I've got my rice flour mix over here. So this is the part where you have to be quite careful. Just sort of unravel and just let your dough fold over and fall into place. So I don't want to sort of lose too much of that airiness. So my rice flour is looking like a pretty good contender right now. Then the plain flour only bread, just flip that over. I'm finding that that's not holding its shape as much as I'd want it to. Right, time to slash. Definitely the rice flour one is holding shape nicely. I seem to have switched my tone between the two doughs. The last bit is to give it a really good spray. And this should create a nice crust over the top of the bread into the oven. Now I've got a steam oven here, so I've got it on a low steam function at 210 degrees C. If you don't have that, you can just take a little tray of water, put it on the bottom of the oven, and then set it at 210, and you can do exactly the same thing. I haven't really kneaded this again or knocked it back at all, so I'm going to go straight into the oven and see what happens. 20 to 25 minutes until it's golden brown on the outside. So for the fillings for my banh mi, and it's actually been all about the bread so far, I've got a whole load of leftovers, and this is, after Thanksgiving or Christmas, you've got loads of stuff just left over, you don't know what to do with it. Banh mi is perfect for that. I've got some leftover turkey, I've got some gravy from my delicious roast dinner, and then some Brussels sprouts, of course, which I'm going to slice up. I'm going to flash fry this, so I want them sort of chunky, but not too solid. I've got my Brussels sprouts, I've got my turkey, and now all I'm going to do is make up my sauce with a bit of gravy and some fish sauce, palm sugar, and a bit of squeezed lime juice at the end. We'll do that in the wok. Let's get cooking. So, really quick, simple wok cooking this. A little bit of oil. Make sure that's smoking hot. My chopped up roast turkey. Brussels sprouts. Just flash fry. I want that nice and smoky. This will all really steam through when I pour some of that gravy in. I'm going to get that to a really nice heat now, so I'm not going to move it around too much. Gravy's coming in. I want this nice and saucy. Whoa, look at that. Fish sauce, palm sugar to balance that out. Mix that in together, let that sauce really vigorously boil. Flick that through, and then you can switch that off and just get a whole load of fresh Thai basil into the wok. That will wilt in really nicely. Just fold that through. It doesn't really need much more cooking than that, because the whole idea of this is to keep those Brussels sprouts nice and crunchy. Squeeze a lime. Filling's ready, easy. So for me, I can immediately see which one I prefer visually, and that is this one here, which is the rice flour and plain flour mix. And the right kind of has lost its shape a little and sort of not risen as much as I'd want it to, and that's just plain flour. So it's almost like it's closer to a French baguette there. Now, I would say get a bread knife to do this, but you know, we are School of Wok and I don't have one of those, so let's go more traditional. You can see how lovely and light and soft that dough is. Beautifully cooked. That to me is a winner. I will cut one of these open though, just to make sure. It's actually quite light as well. Whoa! Now, when cutting into this second bread, albeit terribly, it's actually very light. Oh, so close. I think, if anything, if I were to bake this again, I would probably go for just a little less rice flour in my rice flour mix dough, and I think then it would hold its shape really well, but almost be just as light as your plain flour only dough. I think they might have drawn, you know. I mean, that looks more beautiful, but seems to be just that little bit more dense. Let's see how it goes when I actually fill it up. This lovely glazed leftover turkey and Brussels sprout mix. Straight into the banh mi. Nice and generous portion that. A little bit of fried shallot over the top. I mean, why would you not want to tuck into that? Look how beautiful that is. Homemade street food at your door. So, I guess there's no clean way of doing this. Oh, really big bite. That's delicious. 5 minutes later, I probably shouldn't have taken such a big bite. I'm going to try a bit of the other bread now. Gosh, you know, they're so similar. I think, for me, I like the way that the rice flour dough has kept its shape really nicely. And so if it means maybe just bringing the rice flour down by 50 grams, for me, the rice flour banh mi wins. Guys, it's been a bit of an experiment today, and it really is for me to see what the difference was between the two types of doughs that everyone kind of argues over. They're both brilliant homemade breads. Either way, whether you've got the rice flour or not, try and make banh mi at home.